You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to yet again another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Live every single Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on all of your favorite social media accounts. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian. And
Klaus is still here.
She's here.
Her light has not yet been lit.
She will not
She has
leave.
not stolen the souls of children yet.
She's not going anywhere.
The holiday rom-coms have kept her at bay.
Indeed they have.
When so much love exists, the Klauses cannot win.
That's it.
They cannot win.
We will fight them back with our love of movies.
The mere sight of Tom Hanks sends them cowering into their Klaus holes.
Gosh. That's right.
They cower in fear of Meg Ryan.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, don't blame them.
At least by the time she's doing Kate and Leopold. Is that movie? Is that with Hugh Grant? Or is that one?
I don't know.
That was Hugh Jackman.
Is it Hugh Jackman?
That's
Yes.
somehow worse. And I prefer Jackman to Grant, but still.
I mean, yeah,
I
typically
expect Hugh
do.
Grant to be in a terrible rom-com.
Did I get that wrong? Is that? I thought she was in a movie called that. And it
Yeah,
was
she is with Hugh
Is
Jackman,
it? Okay.
yeah.
Sean's saying, yeah, he's
Okay.
letting
Yes.
you know.
Because,
I'm
well,
the
gosh.
Meg Ryan expert.
It was like when Meg Ryan tried to make a comeback. And it,
That was this year with
that's true.
with David Duchovny.
Yeah.
Which one? What's that one called?
She did a really weird sex movie with
What?
Mark Ruffalo.
When she still looked good or now?
Was that
She was in something.
Nymphomaniac?
No.
Okay. There was a movie that was like a two-parter.
No,
Yeah, that was
Nympho-
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Shia
he
LaBeouf
was
was.
in
Well,
that.
there was a bunch of people in that one, but yeah, the only one I know for sure was Shia.
But no, we
LaBeouf.
LaBeouf. Mr. LaBeouf. He's since made a turnaround.
LaBeouf.
He's now playing a Catholic priest in San Pedro.
I mean,
I do want to see that movie. I
did.
still haven't
Yeah,
checked it
yeah.
out.
He's made good movies, and I mean, he's
Maybe he's turned his life around for the right
he
for
came
the right
out
reasons.
like he recently. Not recently. I want to say it's been several months, but I thought he did say that he was saved recently.
Yeah, he said he was
yeah,
he
yeah.
converted to Catholicism
So,
throughout the making of that movie.
So we'll
I mean,
see.
the weird thing is he's married to what's her name? Who does X and Pearl and Maxine coming out?
I want to say Mia Goth. Is that right?
Is that it? That's it.
Okay,
That's it.
okay.
Mia Goth.
Really?
Yeah,
I
didn't know
they're
that.
married. Yeah.
Really?
Y'all didn't know that?
That's
No.
weird. Yeah.
I know.
She has a movie that she did not that recently, but I think it was this year that looked interesting, and I can't remember what that was either. Like not with it came after X and Pearl.
Okay.
Different director she did it with, but it looked like a kind of a psychological type thing, like thriller. So,
But yeah, I mean, I all I know is that I think they've been together for a few years now.
huh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did not.
Yeah, you can fact check me on that. Has some other news that we're not going to really talk
News.
about in terms of our headlines.
Yeah.
Keanu's house was broken into. Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I saw
had
that.
a firearm stolen. I mean, dude, you
He's
got to
got
move out.
'em.
You got to move out of California.
That's
or,
true.
Or be willing to John Wick that. Okay, come on, we know you got them. We know
Infinity.
you got the gold bars underneath your floor. All right, let's break up the cement. Let's whip out the firearms and let's go to town. All
Yeah,
right?
I don't know who thought let's break into John Wick's house. Like, gosh.
What's weird is that apparently this is not the first time he's had to deal with. I mean, most celebrities probably do on his stature, but he's had to deal with stalkers before and get the police involved. These people apparently he had already called the police on them from earlier in the day. Then they decided to break in while he was gone away from home. So thankfully he wasn't on the premises. But they broke in and were wearing ski masks and I mean basically your normal casual Monday evening in California. That's
True.
just how it happens. They're just giving up on crime in general. But then we also have we're not talking about it. Okay,
So
we're not diving.
I wanted to mention because it was an interesting story. She is married to Shia LaBeouf.
Okay, all right,
They
yeah,
actually
that's
got divorced in 2018 and then got back together. in 2020.
American
And-
Silent.
They divorced in 18, got back in 2020, still together. But she met him on the set of Nymphomaniac. So
Oh, okay. Well, maybe they
So,
figured out something about each
I
other
don't
then
know.
that they liked.
yeah. So yeah, but
Just maybe
but,
into
but
the,
they are still together again after a brief time apart.
Into the
So,
same kind of kinks, I
yeah.
mean, hey.
Maybe
the
I don't
heart,
know.
what the heart wants.
he
What the heart
found
wants.
Jesus, and maybe she got cold feet, but then she was like, "No, I like this," and they got back together.
We'll
I don't
find
know.
out when Maxine comes out.
Yeah. Hopefully
I-
she finds him too.
Knowing the first two movies, I don't predict that there's going to.
There's already been some details that have released about Maxine,
Mm-hmm.
and the director has quoted that it is far gorier than the first two.
Man.
Which
I didn't think the
The
first,
first two
were.
weren't that gory.
They were
weren't-
they were more sexually explicit than gory.
Yes.
and
in my
even
opinion.
then, I will say Pearl ratcheted it up a little bit.
yeah.
But even in terms of its gore, it was more in certain set pieces. It wasn't throughout. So
Yeah.
maybe they mean that it's going to be more spread throughout. I don't know.
I don't with horror like it depends. Like I don't mind gore. I enjoy gore, but sometimes they can be very over the top and untasteful.
It always depends on how it's
And
done.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
But then we've got the Golden Turds. They nominations have released. That's right.
And Disney got a ton, which I think is hilarious because
Wish made it. Wish made a nom for Best Animated.
I want to say.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like 20 something, and I'm
So
gonna.
did Elemental. I thought it was funny too and interesting that for the lack of caring that we have about the Globes, they have like 6 noms now in almost every category, or I think it was every category.
Yeah.
So they bumped it up to from 5 to 6.
27. I knew I'd read that earlier.
Wow.
Disney has 27 nominations at the Golden Globes. I'm like, a company who has completely failed this year.
Yep.
They not a single
So much that they're re-releasing
Yeah.
3 Disney Plus animated films that were not
I
released
think
in
the
theaters.
only movie that was profitable for them this year was Guardians 3. Everything else
Yeah.
flopped.
Yep.
So it's like a
Which tells you that it wasn't profitable.
Yeah.
Because it couldn't make up the losses of the others.
yeah. That's
So,
what I'm
I mean,
saying.
yeah, they're-
a company who has nothing but flops this year, but all those flops were nominated.
But the fact that they're bringing, was it Luca, Soul, and Turning Red? Those were the 3
because they
animated.
released to Disney Plus.
Released
originally.
on
Now,
Disney
Luca's
Plus.
not that bad.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that one's not ultra woke like some of the others.
We're going to get into it, I guess, in the headlines a little bit more. But there's definitely, you could tell there's definitely a lot.
Well, here's the weird thing, and I haven't seen Turning Red, but I just want to point out.
Don't.
I don't want to. But Soul I did watch. It's not that it wasn't woke. It just wasn't.
It wasn't good.
Good.
It
yeah.
wasn't good
It was
at
very
all.
lackluster.
Ooh,
Excuse me.
Bless
Sorry.
You. Bless you, Lord.
Having some allergy issues
Ooh.
this week.
Get the demons out. He's here. Oh, Klaus. Look what
But
she's
you
doing
can,
to
you
you.
can see Disney's definitely trying to do a lot of damage control.
They
a
are.
lot.
That's our main headline this week is woke cinema finally coming to its end. We're going to dive into that.
Not soon enough.
But of course, we have our 2 movie reviews right at the top of the show.
Yep.
We had a little interesting one this week. There wasn't a major release in theaters. So we decided to kind of go back and watch something that released just a couple of weeks ago.
December
on
1st. It's
December 1st.
Not too
no,
long.
it's still relatively.
Look at
in
my
the
watch. And it
realm
bugs
of-
me. I keep
yeah.
looking at the. And I'm like, it's not.
Got it?
Yeah.
Oh, you feel naked, don't you?
Yes, you do.
I left it on the charger, and like every time I go to look, I'm like, it's not there.
I've done that when I go into church one day, and I was just like, I didn't turn around because I had to be projectionist or whatever, and I was like, I can't go back and get it. But man, I was missing it like 3 stand hours. Can't do that.
Well, I was going to look
Think
at the
about
date
that.
because I mentioned December 1st, and I was like, and it's only, and then I was like, there's no date, even
Yep.
though it's in the top of my iPad,
Can't
which I
reference
was
it.
already looking at. I didn't think look at the top of the iPad. I went straight to the watch that's not there.
But no, the movie, of course, that we're talking about is Daily Wire's Lady Ballers.
Yeah, Lady
Caused
Ballers.
quite a storm in terms of its trailer when it released and got a ton of buzz all over the social media apps. So we finally said, hey, look, there's nothing major coming out.
We've reviewed
This
most
is
of-
major because it's getting a
Yeah,
lot of
We've
traction.
reviewed most of their
their
movies.
movies,
I think
yeah.
the only
Yeah.
one we didn't do was Terror on the Prairie.
And I think you've reviewed it. in
I've
terms of,
seen
like,
it.
Yeah,
yeah.
you
And
liked it.
honestly, I think it's the best one they've made, and it's the only one we didn't review.
How about
Oh, wow.
that? Maybe we'll have to turn back
haven't
the clocks.
seen that one.
Yeah,
I
same.
like that one a lot. It was
I
my
haven't either.
favorite out of the ones they've done. But it's also, I think, the first one they did with Bone Tomahawk. Is that no Bonfire? Bone Tomahawk's the
Bonfire
movie. They
Legend.
made. Bonfire Legend.
There
They
you
made
go.
Bone Tomahawk.
No,
but
Bonfire Legends partnered with all of them.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, like they bought the other ones. Like they didn't make
I
their
gotcha.
on the Prairie.
like
gotcha.
that was the
Okay.
first one that like they actually
an
produced
original
it.
that- I gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah,
This
gotcha.
is also a Bonfire Legend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
movie,
because they
so-
do. Yeah, they partner with them for like Brandon said on all their
Unfortunately.
movies. But
And this one was also one that they, I think,
this was the
they
first
made.
one like written and directed by like Jeremy Boring.
We're gonna get into it. Let's just
Yeah.
well, here's our opinion. Check out the review, and we'll do a deep dive after.
Yeah.
Here's our review of Lady Ballers. The following is a review by Keith Cheatham. It's clear to see the writing on the wall. Hollywood is in trouble. With their biggest releases bombing at the box office, two of the most successful films of the last 2 weeks are foreign films. Blame COVID, blame streaming, and blame the strikes all you want. It's clear people aren't avoiding movies at the cinema. They're avoiding the garbage Hollywood keeps shoveling out. With that in mind, and no major releases this week, we have decided to check out the latest film from Daily Wire, who for the last few years have committed themselves to making films opposite of Hollywood. Their latest film, written and directed by Daily Wire co-CEO Jeremy Boring, titled Lady Ballers, marks their first foray into a more adult-themed raunchy comedy, poking fun at the latest trend of male athletes competing in women's sports as trans women. Starring Boring himself as Coach Rob, who is fired for his aggressive coaching style, in a world where teaching men to be tough competitors is frowned upon. Rob, desperate to make ends meet, soon discovers the gender-fluid world of trans athletes through his daughter, who has been taught in school about varying genders. After running into a former championship player of his while desperately applying to work at a drag bar, Rob comes up with the ingenious idea to form an all-trans team of men playing as women, so as to dominate the sport and come back out on top. After all, who could cry foul? Highlighting the absurdity of allowing biological men with massive advantages over female athletes to compete and consistently take first, Lady Ballers is a film that will and has ruffled lots of feathers. That said, it has also found a massive fan base, boasting a 91% audience score from over 5,000 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. Oddly enough, the film has received little to no reviews from mainstream critics. Yes, Lady Ballers from the outset is a politically charged film with a clear audience, and depending on which side of the political spectrum you fall on will more or less determine your enjoyment of the movie. This is also partially its downside. Lady Ballers is honestly a well-made film with a budget reported to be around $7 million. The movie harkens back to the typical 90s style adult comedy. Boring brings his dry, sarcastic wit and delivery to his performance, lambasting the absurd, with a who's who of conservative personalities popping up throughout the film. That said, the movie isn't quite as clever as I thought it would be, and the jokes are relatively tame from a conservative point of view. Sure, the left side of the aisle will find the film vile, but the movie honestly doesn't cover any ground that hasn't been gone over in many of the Daily Wire's host shows. Even the humor and jokes poking fun of men competing in women's sports has been done before by better works. Like South Park, a show enjoyed by the right and left alike that has lambasted the subject in ways that are both more clever and funnier. For Daily Wire's first self-produced comedy, the movie will definitely appeal to their fan base, and has already proven to have done so. I have never been fond of preaching to the choir films. However, and while I can side with the Daily Wire sentiments, it's not as clever as I'd hoped. Sure, the subject is not one that lends itself to reaching across the aisle, nor should it, as that would defeat the purpose as to why this film was made. I don't expect it to appeal to anyone but its more direct demographic. That said, like many Christian-made movies we've chastised for missing the mark, Lady Ballers feels like it relies too much on knowing its fan base will eat it up, than being as clever and well-written as it could be. I give Lady Ballers 1.5 out of 4 stars. Alrighty, guys, 1.5. Oh,
First negative rating I've given them.
this is a miss for us here on the first of the Daily Wire miss that we have on the show.
We can call out things that even if we're of the same viewpoint politically that we
Yeah.
don't like.
Well,
Because
let's-
if it's not good, it's not good.
Go around the table. Sean, what did you end up giving it?
It was a stretch to give it the 1.5, but I give it 1.5.
All right.
Oh, were you wanting to go lower?
Yeah, I was wanting to go 1.
Okay. I did give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I gave it 2.
Okay.
It is a low 2.
Yeah.
And it was actually you all discussing it amongst yourselves. Because here's the thing. it's kind of one of those things where, and I'll be willing to admit my bias here.
Yeah.
In terms of not only being a conservative and also, supporting the Daily Wire and everything they're doing, whether it's them, Crowder, whether it's Tucker Carlson, anyone across the political spectrum that is on the right side of the aisle that's trying to create and do things that are interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, again, check out our past reviews of the Hyperions, Run, Hide, Fight. I'm trying to think of the other one with the girl. She's locked
Shut
in the
in?
pantry.
Was that called Shut In?
Shut In.
It's Shut In. I think it was Shut In. But it's like we tuned into these. They were good movies.
Check out Terror on the Prairie. I love it.
And I am. I'm actually kind of ashamed that that's the one that I haven't seen because it is
Right, because that's Gina Carano's.
Yeah.
right.
And she was awesome.
And of course, that was the one they partnered with her on to bring her over from her being outcasted by Disney.
Yes.
But at the same time, you like you said, you got to be honest. There were some times throughout this film that I was entertained.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I felt like I was kind of forcing laughter a little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely there was humor from those who are in the in crowd who follow Daily Wire stuff.
Yeah.
Who know, all of their pundits and also seeing all the cameos. Like, I didn't think any of those were bad. I thought they were funny. I think that overall, though, a lot of the funny parts that were the most humorous were showed in the trailer. So it kind of sold it a little bit. Sold me a bill of goods up front that I didn't think delivered on after I went to see the full feature length. And then beyond that, you also just had, I felt like, while there were some kind of tongue-in-cheek stuff with pushing their own Daily Wire advertising, whether it was like the she, her, he, him bars in the throughout, or the Jeremy's Razor stuff. I thought all that was funny and that was okay and that was great. But then when it came to actual wit outside of that, amongst the whole bit, I felt like it fell flat.
And story and like the characters, it's like really the only point of this movie was to like kind of slam the absurdity of men playing in female sports, which I get. I mean, that's the point. Like I said in the review, you normally like when we knock certain Christian movies, when you're preaching to the choir, I'm not that overtly fond of that. It's like, who are you? Like, the only people that are going to enjoy this are the people who
you got to make something compelling.
Yeah, they already have that viewpoint. I didn't knock this one quite as badly because obviously that is the point, is the political message. So it's like when your movie's point is specifically a political message, you can't avoid that as much. So I get that, but it wasn't. There, like you said, there wasn't a lot of wit. I mentioned in the review South Park because South Park has made fun of this on multiple episodes, and I thought done it better.
And I actually do think the Panderverse episode that just dropped like a month or so ago actually hurt this movie more than it helped it.
Probably.
Only because it's South Park. It obviously was spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
And it hit all the same kind of messages in terms of that pandering to the woke universe.
And honestly, I think like even the pacing, like it's not a long movie, it's a short movie, but by the end of it, I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, this needs to wrap up. Like, I don't really care enough. Like, the joke has worn itself enough. Like, I've laughed enough at the parts that were funny, and like the joke's done. Like, there's nothing else I care about to finish this movie, really.
Yeah.
Sean, what about you?
No, I agree with everything Keith said. I would go a little bit further and say, for me, beyond the weak story and weak acting, I feel like the movie is definitely... The thing is, like, the only way you can watch this movie is if you're a Daily Wire subscriber.
Yeah.
So that's who they made the movie for.
Yeah,
But
true.
The other films that they've done are films that felt like if you were not a Daily Wire subscriber, you could have seen those movies in a theater and never known that that's who made them. Like, they were made for everybody.
I don't even think you have to be conservative. I think there's like, they won't admit it, but there's plenty of people I think who are left leaning that could watch that movie, and if they didn't know it was connected to Daily Wire, they'd be like, "Oh, that was a good movie."
Yeah, exactly. I think this is the first one to me that actually felt like this is. It's funny because you talk about the Panderverse. This movie pandered to the right, and it pandered to the Daily Wire audience. And I felt like that's okay. Like, you're a subscriber. You're paying for this movie to be made, so it's nice that they're making something that is kind of directed towards you. And I feel like if I was a subscriber, that's kind of how I would feel. I'd be like, well, I wish my money went to something a little bit better, but at the same time, it's funny you're making something. But the morality issues that I found in the movie were the problem for me. There were too many moments that I felt like here's this company, and they're trying to make a movie with a little bit of crude humor, and I feel it. I thought there were things that could have been done funnier, and there's things that they went for that I was kind of like, oh wow, I wish they would have went further.
Yeah.
I wish they would have poked the bear even more.
Yeah,
but
true.
there were issues where I feel like you got Jeremy Boring, who's the face of the company, and in reality, obviously he is a morally upstanding person, or at least he is in front of the cameras. And I felt like, so you put him in the movie not only as the director but as the main actor, and you give him a role where he plays the opposite kind of man that he is in real life. I felt like if they would have used somebody different, I may have responded better to that. But it irked me a couple of times to see him tied up in a bed with a dominatrix,
right?
And him talking to this young reporter and saying, "Yeah, I really would like to sleep with you, but I'm not going to." And it's like, I felt like there were moral moments where he could have shown a bit more morality and been the better man that he doesn't. There's actually one moment where he's explaining to his daughter about why she can't be a boy when she comes and says that she, thinks she wants to. And I kept waiting for a moment. I'm like, where's, I get it. It's supposed to be a comedy and all this stuff, but you're making this movie for your audience. And I would feel like the majority of that audience would be like, where's God in all of this? I kept waiting for him to say even something as simple as, well, you can't be a boy because that God made you a girl and you have a purpose and this is what your purpose. And he explains, I like the way he explained it to her, that these are the things that you do really well, and that's good, that's okay. But I just kept waiting for, it's like, man, you could have thrown his name in there at least once. And there was just, I don't know, there were a lot of issues that I had with the morality and especially the guys playing against the girls. There's like a not even 10-second spot in the film where they actually feel bad that they're beating all of these women who have worked hard to get there, and so it's just a momentary thing where they feel the pain that I feel like the women in women's sports are feeling when they're getting dominated by dudes that pretend to be women. Right. And I felt like you need to play that up more in this film. You need to showcase the fact that these girls work their asses off to get where they are, only to have it stripped from them by a dude in a wig and all this stuff. And I'm like, these guys do that, but then they immediately just start reaping the benefits and taking advantage of it, which I felt like, yeah, you're not showcasing the dilemma as much as you're showcasing the kind of like the irony in all of it. And so there were some issues. Other than that, I just didn't think it was funny. There was one or two moments that I actually laughed out loud. The rest of it was like, this is just really lukewarm comedy. Like I just didn't feel like.
I was gonna say I agree with you there. It's funny because I think it would have played better if this had been a movie where, because you kind of know going in, this is made for Daily Wire subscribers. That's why all the cameos are in there. They know this is kind of and I actually didn't mind that. I thought it would have been better for them to almost, and they sort of do with the trailer that comes out or what that came out. They embrace the idea that this is for Daily Wire subscribers, and this is kind of a, an homage of like, hey, you wanted to see us, take a different route. We're going to go off the beaten path here, and because like you said, with the movies they released early on, the message was very clear. It was, we want non-subscribers and also people who don't necessarily see them either on the political side of the spectrum in terms of being right-wing, or even in terms of just expecting this kind of content from a conservative outlet. That was their whole point of kind of staking their claim. And you can tell it's like, okay, Boring now with the razors, with the chocolate, he's staking his claim in terms of, making up, a capitalist market, a separate economy, which they're not, secretive of doing. And I think it's the right move, because obviously you have people who are hungering for this type of competition and this type of, these type of things to consume. The difference is that I think when you make something like this, I kind of agree with Sean in the sense that you've either got to go I mean, I'm sitting here thinking of like Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison, like Adam Sandler comedies that
Lean into it.
They lean into it,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
very raunchy. But and even the moral message, that's why I'm almost kind of forgiving that they didn't play the God moral aspect, simply because it's like, I guess I can understand if you can't divorce like Jeremy Boring or even some of the others from who they are in reality, because if we listen to their shows and you know what they stand for, I mean, honestly, I think the best one of all of them was Matt Walsh. I think he landed his part and was that kind of dry humor, but also like you could just tell he would loathe actually
The person he's playing.
exactly,
Yeah.
which is why he plays it so
Yes.
well, because
No, I
he
agree.
knows
I think
what makes them
yes.
detestable. But even still, when it comes to Boring, I think you're right. I think maybe this would have been a movie for him to take a backseat on and just be the writer-director and not be the central driving force of the main character, simply because then you maybe have a little bit more time to plan out the jokes or to plan out the humor in such a way that you're not just focused on being the main character of the story, but your focus is on the actual humor that I think now, if you really want to be taken seriously, it's not just a fandom flick, which it's fine to serve that purpose. And you can tell by the Rotten Tomatoes score you mentioned in the review, it's overwhelmingly positive. And there's nothing wrong with having your crowd rally behind you and cheer you on, because everybody wants to see this kind of content and more of it made. And that's why I settled on 2, is just to say it's a good first attempt. It's not great by any means. It is easily forgettable. But if you made it in the vein of just saying, hey, we're here to do this to not only show our fans that we hear their voices and we want to give them something to kind of rally behind and laugh about. And there were tons of people that I know that were in the film that were extras that are Daily Wire fans that are on Twitter that even as Red Moon follow.
Yeah.
And it's like you can tell it was made for them and by them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also want to see that breaking of the mold. I want to see something that is like those other movies that either you, whether you bought them or you produced them, like Terror on the Prairie, that it can be that fan flick, and it can also be something that I'm going to now watch, not only as a conservative film that makes fun of exactly what content it's making fun of and how absurd it is, and the cultural warfare that we've got going on, but I want to see something that is going to be so out loud, even if it's a Talladega Nights or something along the Will Ferrell line, Step Brothers, the other guys. These are types of comedies that you can watch regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on, because they're not geared towards something. And even if you have a central topic like the one of this film of trans women being considered real women and playing against others in sports and demolishing them, it's like you said, Keith, I think they take that joke and they kind of extrapolate it, they stretch it out too thin to where it not only becomes not funny, but you lose interest in it. And the other pillars that are holding up the plot just are not interesting enough.
Yeah, I wasn't interested in the characters enough that it carried the movie, like the joke carried the movie enough. I mean, it's been very popular among their fan base. It has been a huge success theirs, and that's who they made it for. So, I will give them their props there. Heck, it even has a positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, granted, only 5 critics, legit.
It's like 60%.
Yeah, it's 60% because only 5 critics have reviewed it. But the audience score is over 5,000 reviews at 91%. So,
and good for them.
And granted, I'm sure that's all conservatives who went on and reviewed it the same way that the left will go on and prop up the Little Mermaid remake, and it has like an 80-something. It's like, look, I'm not dumb. I know that nobody from the left went on to Rotten Tomatoes and was like, oh yeah. I mean, but it is what it is. That's why you have to take Rotten Tomatoes with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's one of those films where it's like, I'm not sorry they made it. I'm glad they made it.
Right.
I
just wanted more out of it.
I did. I like you said, I either wanted them to just go. I wanted them to go for a really good message. Like, give me this funny movie, but then roll it into like a really decent family / all this, just a good message. And even Happy Gilmore has it. It has an upstanding message at the end. It's like good comedies back when those movies were made. Billy Madison, all that kind of stuff. Adam Sandler, and The Wedding Singer.
Great.
Fantastic.
Yes, great messages, but there is that funny
chock
there.
Full with hilarious, humor.
Yes, and random kind of humor.
Yes.
I told Keith, I said the only part in this movie that I literally laughed out loud was a random slap that one of the guys gives his brother
Yeah, it was
when
great.
they're in the gym.
Yep.
And he just, it's like, okay, let's go. And he stands up and slaps his brother and takes off running. And I'm like, I can see two brothers doing
Right,
that. And
right.
that was the only authentically comedic movie or part in the movie.
Right.
And
I mean,
was because it was just off the wall.
It does. It seems like a big group of friends that got together and were like, hey, let's
Yeah.
make a movie. And then this is what they came up with. And it's not
It's-
terrible.
No.
It's just, I mean, from the way y'all reviewed it, it's definitely
Well,
on the terrible end. Just based on objective review.
Yeah, it's not a
if you want to make fun of this thing, that's very much
Worth
make
making fun of?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's very much should be made fun of.
It's-
then go see,
yeah.
watch this movie. But it's definitely not a. Good
It's one of
movie.
those things where I'm glad they made it, and I think for what they were going for, it's fine. But going forward, like Jeremy Boring is co-writing and co-directing the Pendragon cycle.
Pendragon,
It's like
yeah.
if that has the same quality as this movie, that's going to be because that's supposed to be
And
like
it's weird because
that's supposed
I
to be a
don't think
fantasy epic,
right?
So
and
yeah,
I don't think it will, but I also think that was another thing that threw up the red flag. Now, granted, I don't know when this one thing I did like about this was the marketing and when they dropped it because they knew and Boring actually talked about this on another podcast. He was talking about how he didn't want it to be. It was not going to be a movie you would have released a trailer 3
Yes.
months ago,
and it was made fast
built-
and cheap,
right?
Yeah.
And it's like I think all of that was done extremely well. However, it's like the where you fell short was the content, and ultimately, it's like I think he might have he's playing a lot of roles right now and has his hats in a lot of rings.
Yeah.
And I think if his focus is really on because I do think the way he's talked about the Pendragon cycle and
Yes.
that story and that what it means to him, I can tell he's I think playing it a lot closer to the chest.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas this is just supposed to be a fun.
I really
romp.
feel like this is something that after like all of the absurdity that's been going on, he was just like, let's just slap this together. Like I really do. I feel like they just said, let's slap this together. And for something that was just very quickly slapped together to put out as a kind of counter, like it does show, but I think it's still competently made.
But
so
with Snow White supposedly coming out next year, is that just going to be slapped together too?
well, see, that's the
To
thing.
get something out that competes
I
with
don't
Disney.
think so because I mean, like they are like again, it comes out next year. So because this was all made like within this year, like they did it very quickly, from my understanding.
And I will
So-
say, I mean, I liked, I thought it did have a decent message. I just thought it was strung out way too long. And I thought the conclusions in which Jeremy Boring even reaches at the end, and you see the kind of turn, because, he is supposed to be this person he's kind of the villain at first because he's like, well,
We're going to take advantage
if
of
thi-
it.
yeah, if this is the world we live in now, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that I get to have my cake and eat it too, and I
Yeah.
get back on top. And so you see him kind of turn from this selfish individual to a selfless one who gets back together with his wife at the end. And but there's again those little story beats, and even with the reporter and how big a role she even played in it. It was like I didn't mind her diabolical scheme at the beginning, but then even I thought her story kind of took too much of a center stage than it probably should have. It should have always been focused on Jeremy Boring's character and his family, and that being it. And it does for the most part, but again, throughout the hour and 45 minutes, I think is how long
yeah,
this
it's
film
about
was.
hour 45. It's not terrible length.
It's not, but when you're talking a comedy and when you're talking about, because I hate to say it because I don't have the clip right here, but I actually just found it from Film Name Drop Film Threat. Made a video this past week, and they were talking about Trey Parker and Matt Stone going to, I think it was funny enough, Harvard, it was the Tisch School of Arts in New York. But they went there, and it was a video clip like 10 years ago of them going to this writing class, and they were showing, and their rule of thumb was they were like, it should always be and this happened, or but because of this, it didn't or did happen, not and then this happened.
Yeah.
Or what? Damn it! I forgot the video.
I get the gist.
But
Instead of like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, there should always be like a cause and effect, basically. Yeah.
And the way in which they were constructing it, the video is way better than I just described it. I just butchered it. I probably just broke the rule. But no, the way I liked it was because it showed you that how things naturally flow from story element to story element. You
Yes.
don't just sprinkle in ideas.
You don't do
where,
a Marvel.
Right. Well,
And now there's a blob. We don't know why.
right.
Yeah.
And or a MacGuffin that you just explain away because you can.
Quantum bands.
And And that's the sad thing that I thought this movie failed the most on, is so many of the set pieces and so many of the scenes don't naturally flow from one to the next. They simply just go from this funny scene to this funny set piece to this funny set piece. And while you have things that are narratively strung together, it doesn't flow naturally from one thing to the next, simply because it just you don't let it breathe, and there wasn't really like a better writing process.
That's how I felt about like the dominatrix scene he talked about. I was just like, not only was it weird to see Boring in that position, but I was like, why are we even here? Like, what is this scene for? Like,
It was like they were just kind of brainstorming, and they thought, that would be funny.
It'd be funny if he did this.
And they all laughed at it in the room, and so they put it in there.
It'd be funny if they bring in a elementary school girls basketball team to play against grown men at the end.
Well, and it was funny because as that was supposed to be the heartwarming moment, I kind of got a chuckle, but then at the same time, I was like, but why did this happen? Why? What? No. It was a little bit too much. So there you go. Our official review as it stands, 1.5 out of 4 stars for Lady Ballers.
Yep.
Yep. A lot of people may be hating us on this one, but our reviews stand, as we call them.
Well, make better movies, and we'll give them better scores.
Hey, they have. We've rated them.
I know. No, I'm just saying.
We've given them positive reviews.
This is the only one that we've really,
that we've.
I think most of them were. I know. Run, Hide, Fight, and Shut In. I gave 3. I don't remember if I did that for
Hyperion's. I want to say was like 2.5.
I think I went a little bit lower
until Lady Ballers. Hyperion's was the one that I didn't like. That was the one I liked the least.
Yeah, agreed.
It wasn't bad. It had that Wes Anderson-esque kind of feel to it, but other than that.
But I mean, we're still looking forward to the next one.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if anything, that's what an absolute.
Give me more kids content so I can subscribe.
Bent Key.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for. Yeah, but there ain't nothing on it. I've checked it.
I mean, they've got enough for compared to there not being anything else out there. I mean, the fact that it's like where else can you go for kids content? You can't go to Disney Plus.
I know. When your kids watch as much TV as I do, though, they'd watch all of that content in a week, and then I'd be like, what's
PBS
next?
Kids.
No,
that's not better than Disney.
No. Sesame Street teaching you how to be a girl.
That's on Max now. Well, I don't know where it is. It used to be. It went from PBS to HBO, and I don't know where it's at now.
Yeah, they keep trying to find a way to save it, even though nobody wants to watch it now.
And it's dying because they killed it.
But let's move on to brighter, greener pastures.
Yeah,
please.
With this week's rom-com review, here is Sleepless in Seattle. The following is a review by Keith Cheatham. It's week 2 of our Christmas rom-com reviews, and while we kicked the reviews off with Love Actually celebrating its 20th anniversary, we've gone back a bit further this week to review a film that is now 30 years old, though its anniversary was in June, as the film released that month in 1993. This particular rom-com ranges from Christmas to Valentine's Day. With its winter setting, themes on love, and emphasis on both holidays, Sleepless in Seattle is certainly a welcome watch during Christmas. Written and directed by Nora Ephron, who had previously written When Harry Met Sally and would go on to write and direct You've Got Mail, Ephron cemented herself as the rom-com queen, with the film going on to be nominated for Best Original Screenplay and Song at the Academy Awards. Starring Tom Hanks as Sam, a widower who moves from Chicago to Seattle with his son Jonah after the passing of his wife Maggie. On Christmas Eve, a year and a half after Maggie's passing, Jonah recognizes his father's loneliness, calls into a talk radio show to seek advice for getting his dad a new wife. When the host forces Sam onto the phone, thousands of female listeners around the country are enthralled by his honesty and loving devotion to his late wife. One such listener from Baltimore, Annie, played by Meg Ryan, likewise becomes encapsulated by Sam. Currently engaged, Annie realizes there's a magic missing in the relationship with her fiancé Walter, played by Bill Pullman. The rest of the film is a will they, won't they, as Jonah and Annie's friend Becky, portrayed by Rosie O'Donnell, do their best to bring the two together. Often cited by critics as one of the greatest rom-coms ever made, I can certainly agree that they don't make rom-coms like this anymore. Lacking crass and overtly sexual humor aside from typical adult banter, when looking for love, and focusing on the actual humanity of two people searching for love, Sleepless in Seattle is both funny and heartfelt. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan give fantastic performances, and while never meeting until the film's end, Efren skillfully builds their infatuation with one another from afar. The outrageous odds of two people coming together as they do in the movie are not likely, and is the stuff of Hollywood films. Yet, at the same time, it is crafted in a way that feels genuine because every so often real life can be stranger than fiction. Inspired by the film, An Affair to Remember, featuring Cary Grant and Deborah Carr, Efren heavily utilizes footage, lines, and plot beats from the classic to juxtapose Annie and Sam's relationship, playing homage to the classic rom-com while building a beloved rom-com for a new generation. Sleepless in Seattle is not without flaws. A few scenes could use a little tidying up in writing, and I have never been overtly fond of affair tropes, as Annie pursues Sam while actively engaged. This gripe, however, is addressed within the film, as Annie is constantly in doubt and is forced to confront her feelings about her engagement and resolves the issue herself, recognizing the lack of meaning and love in her engagement. With a fairly brisk runtime, the biggest gripe of all is wanting more. While I wouldn't change the film's premise or ending, it is bittersweet that we don't get to see Annie and Sam's relationship blossom. But it's enough to know the magic is there. I give Sleepless in Seattle 3.5 out of 4 stars.
Woo!
That's
brother. Very different from the other one.
Yeah. Well, way different. And now people are really going to curse us. Sleepless in Seattle?
Yeah. Hey, it just shows that we do have a soft side.
Well, it's considered one of the better rom-coms ever made. So
yeah,
I mean,
Nora Ephron, because she can do it.
What would you give it, John?
Oh, I'm 3.5.
Okay,
easily. Yeah,
I gave it 3. I settled on 3.
That's fair.
I liked it just as much, I think, as you all. It's one of those where it's so funny because I enjoyed it a lot, and there is a lot about this movie that I don't think holds up well for a lot of other rom-coms of their era.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I think Love Actually, this was one problem I had with it. It's very much dated in terms of the time that it was released, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of themes in there that are universal and whatnot. Yeah, but when you watch it back, it just seems very like, okay.
It seems like 2003.
It does. It very much does. This one I don't think feels like that at all. I mean, yeah, you've got all of the decor and the production design and sort of that. It's stuck in that time period, of course. But as far as the actual the way the story flows, the way the serendipitous meetup, and like even I just like the characterization of him being heartbroken. I mean, from the opening scene when they're in the cemetery, you don't need much buildup at all. You literally see him and the kid sitting there, and you just hear this little monologue over the scenery of the city backdrop. And I just thought it was not only beautifully done, it was the right way to start the film. And it's one of those things where it's hard when you watch a movie for the first time and you see something like that and you're like, oh, this is going to be something special. Yeah. And I think from every story beat on, it does hit those marks. Other than just like a little nitpicky things in terms of the writing, it was a great movie. I mean, fantastic.
That's how I felt. I had a thought in my head. That's why I started talking, and now I can't remember. Sean, I'll get back to mine. Like I draw. Like there's something he said that I was going to piggyback off of, and for the life of me, I can't think of it now.
No, this has always been one of my favorite movies. I watched this as a teenager, and I mean it came out before that, but when I was a teenager, I saw this movie and thought to myself, like, why do I like this? Because this is like, I mean, it's a romantic comedy, and I was a teenage boy. I'm like, I shouldn't like this. But I did. I loved it. I've always been...
Make you feel warm?
I don't know. I've always liked Meg Ryan. I thought she's gone to the wayside of late. But
she got older.
But back in the 80s and 90s, I was in love with Meg Ryan. And I also think that her and Tom Hanks have on-set chemistry.
Yes.
That shows in every movie. You've got Mail, Joe versus the Volcano. Those are movies that they've done together that they are great together on screen. I don't know what backstage I've heard she's nuts, but he handles it well. But they just work good together. They're a believable couple.
Yeah.
And I think his interaction with his son in the movie is one of the things that, as I've gotten older, as I've watched the movie multiple times, thousands of times probably, that I get closer and closer to him as a dad. And I feel like his interaction with his son, the things that they talk about, the way he handles some of the conversations that come up, I think are very real and genuine. and
The way they banter back and
yes.
forth.
Yes,
Just having conversations with my own father in
Yeah.
that way, it's like it was natural and it seemed natural.
The only one, and this was still more of a nitpick, the only one that started off that I wasn't too fond of, but I liked the way it wrapped up, was when they did have like the talk about sex
at the
'Cause, like,
sink.
Yeah, because one, like, my dad wouldn't be that openly talking about sex that
True.
way with
Very
me as
true.
a child.
Yeah.
But I do like when he asked him, where did you get all these ideas? And he was like,
Jed's got cable.
Like, that was realistic to me. Like when he was like, oh, my friend has cable. And he was like, well, you're not allowed to go to that friend, or you're not allowed to watch cable anymore. I was like, okay, that part was realistic. That one, but the beginning of it, I was just like,
not only
weird.
that, there is the other scene a little bit later on when he's speaking out loud, and of course the kid comes back in the room and he's like, how long have you been standing there? And he's like, long enough to know that you've been with like six
or
women
seven girls.
and he goes and then
that one.
he
was like
jokingly
7
says
or whatever.
8, and he says the
Yes.
last girl's name, and I
Yeah.
was like, that was a little bit too
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
But-
because he's 8 years old, so it's
Right.
kind of like I think it's, as a dad, you say stuff out loud sometimes, and then you kind of catch yourself, or at least you even have that moment where you're like, does he even understand what I just said?
Right.
And I agree. I feel like that it's insinuated that he definitely knows what he's talking about as an 8-year-old boy, and maybe an 8-year-old boy shouldn't know about all of that stuff.
And I was forgiving of it because I think it played off in two ways. I think one way is it was just comedic. It was supposed to be
it's supposed to be
scene.
comedic.
Yeah.
But the other way too is I'm like, this is a guy who's been single now for a year and a half and without a wife, and I think it kind of showcased a little bit of not only the tension with them, but also that this is what happens when you don't have a mother figure in the home.
No doubt. Because I mean, if you think in reality, if I said something like that in front of one of my kids, my wife would be like, "Don't say that in front of him."
Right.
He doesn't have that
filter.
second half. Yeah,
Right.
he doesn't have it.
And
So-
part of that is that's also what I love, and is the genuine back and forth between them, because it feels like a father and son living alone on their own, trying to make it without having that mom role. But also there was one other scene that I really enjoyed, and it kind of sealed the deal with me, and it was the banter with Rita Wilson, who is actually
Yes,
Tom
his
Hanks'
wife.
wife,
Yeah,
who plays his sister in the movie, and then her husband, who I only know
great
from
scene.
the captain on not captain on Titanic.
Yeah,
He's the builder. He built the ship, or the architect of Titanic. But no, it's funny because they're all kind of joking around the TV or the table. And then she brings up something and goes on about it and gets all dramatic. And then they're like, "Oh yeah!" And then when I saw that movie and he threw the grenade down the hole and it blew up and everybody, and it was just
They're making fun of her.
exactly. And she
pauses and looks at him.
and I hated it because it was the reason I loved it so much is I hated the fact that we don't get movies or that in movies anymore.
Yeah.
Because heaven forbid there be an actual difference between the sexes.
Yeah.
And that's again to go back to Lady Baller's point, and where the cultural confusion comes into play anymore is you can't have that divide anymore. You can't actually show differences between men and women and stereotype them because gosh, we can't fit into those boxes anymore.
Somebody.
And that's the other thing that this movie just. The reason why it hits so well is because it plays into how men and women are.
Yeah.
And again, how that is one thing I just think, Efren got so right with this.
Yes, I think it felt very organic. That was actually the point I had forgotten earlier, was that there was never a moment in the movie that I felt like they were trying to shove exposition down my throat.
Right.
Like they didn't have to be like, well, this is what's happening and this is what's happening. Like everything flowed organically. The characters felt real, and the way it all built up, and even the romance, like I mentioned in the review, as like the odds of what happens in the movie would be extremely low in real life.
Right.
But it's done so well that it's believable, because sometimes things are like stranger than fiction, and sometimes things like that can and do happen. So the fact that it's done so well that it's believable, I'm like, yeah, I can believe that this couple, like through this bizarre circumstance, found each other at the top of the Empire State Building.
Right. Yeah. One of you talked about it being organic and how everything flowed. It's like one of my favorite things in the movie is there's a scene where she sits down at the table in her house and she's listening to the guy on the radio, and she gets an apple out and starts peeling it in this spiral,
Yep.
And then later in the movie, he's telling his son about some of the little things that his wife did because his son is starting to forget his dead mother. and he's trying to be a good dad and remind him of the things that she did. And he says, your mom could peel an apple in one long spirally piece. And it's like, if you really weren't paying attention, you missed that Meg Ryan was doing that. Yeah. And but the writing and the way they set that up in the film is done so well that it's not predictable. It's not like some of the hallmarky kind of rom-coms where you see
easily treaded into that.
Yeah, you can be like, oh well, we know he's going to do this later.
Yes.
Now, and that was completely unexpected.
They didn't have
the touching of the hand.
Yeah.
The touching of the hand. I knew it was coming. They were foreshadowing it when he talks about it, and they bring it up twice. Where he's like, the first time I touched her hand just to help her get out of the car, and I knew it was going to come back to that, but I didn't know if it was going to feel forced or not. And the way it wrapped, and it was so gingerly done that it just and I love that it happens and no words are said.
Yes.
From that moment on, they walk into the elevator and then
they
boom,
just
the
kind
doors
of stare
close,
at
and that's
each
it.
other. Yeah,
and I liked
they show they don't tell. Like they didn't have to. They didn't have to later on see him spiraling the apple and him be like, you peel an apple just like my wife, because that's exactly what they would do in a modern movie. They would have him say what you already know. It's like, we can put two and two together.
Right. We pick up on the nuance.
I liked Bill Pullman. And I liked his reaction to when she tells him that he could be over there at the Empire State Building right now, and he's
it sucked though.
It does. It's a hard hit
because he's a nice guy.
He is,
and it shows
good.
Nice guys finish last.
You don't want to break Bill Pullman's heart,
right?
Well, I love me some Bill Pullman.
But I also hated that was the only part that I didn't hate it. But the reason I also knocked another half star off was because I thought the Bill Pullman trope of I thought it was funny how he has all of these stupid little
allergies.
That was fine. That was okay. The quirks
Yeah.
were all good, but it was ultimately her being like, well, I don't truly deserve you. And I'm just like, every woman who says that to a good guy,
crap.
BS. Okay, that's bull crap. But ultimately, it's like, because they're living together, because they've had this life together, and I thought it was kind of cute when she's sneaking downstairs to hear the radio, and because still, excuse me, at that moment, this is such a long shot of anything happening. I mean,
yes.
The conversation she has with Rosie O'Donnell, I thought was so well done, in her saying, I'm losing my mind. This is stupid. This is never going to play out. Why am I giving into this? And I liked that because it was her kind of indulging in this fantasy, but knowing in reality it wasn't going to take form.
Yeah.
And I almost wished at the end, instead of her letting Bill Pullman down, I know they wanted him to be a nice guy and not write him off as a bad character.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he just seemed like a weak pushover, which in the end, I'm kind of like, hey, good, she didn't end up with him.
You feel sorry for you. Don't want to have to feel sorry for him. You'd rather him be a jerk.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
Be like, okay,
I'd rather,
yeah.
or something come up where he's so devoted to his business trip that he can't make it in on that night, and she happens to go to the Empire State Building because she's already there, and that's when they meet, and then it ends up being that she's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, I fell in love with somebody else. And then at least in that moment, I would have thought, okay, she doesn't actually have to come face to face with her fiance, who he literally just gave her his grandma's ring.
Yeah,
and she's just like, here, take it back. Oh, thanks. You're being so swell about this.
I'm
like, what?
I did like that when she says I don't deserve you, and he's like, well, maybe you don't.
Yeah,
I did like he got his little. But yes, it is.
But him saying
it's
that
pushover,
was again why you like him so much.
Yes,
him saying that was you couldn't help but like the guy.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be
right.
Who's she's settling for?
I almost want to see
I get that,
a Sleepless in Dallas, and we see Bill Pullman down there in Texas, someone
sneezing all over somebody.
Should have made a sequel.
It's like the air's so dry down here, it helps my allergies, and he meets somebody.
Just moved to Arizona.
But no, overall, I thought it was fantastic. Those were my only two gripes. Were just like some of the writing, but mostly the Bill Pullman storyline. I didn't mind it. I just thought for them to make her so invested and involved, I would have liked it if maybe she had just was taking him to meet the family for the first time, which was the case, but almost like they had just been dating for a couple months and they were still kind of far off from even talking about spending their life together.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, they had to make it seem more impactful that she was breaking off something with a really good guy to find fate and love with Tom Hanks's character. And that was the only part I didn't really like about the story. But overall, I mean, still, there's a reason it holds up. There's a reason that tons of people still love this movie and continue to revisit it. So definitely 3.5 out of 4 stars for Sleepless in Seattle. Watch it for this Christmas season if you haven't. I think we're ready for some headlines.
Do it.
It's working!
Almost perfectly timed. It was almost there, but that worked. That worked.
Well, I didn't really want to go over the, but
I know you, and I'd already clicked on it.
but it's fine. It happens.
But no, our main headline is not Rob Reiner, which we just saw in Sleepless in Seattle, losing his mind and making a movie about Christian nationalism. It's a threat. We were talking about it during the review a little bit. The fact that he is not the funny, humorous man that we have come to know from his past. He has gone off the left-wing, loopy, nutso end, and he is just continuing to just spiral, kind of like Stephen King.
Yeah.
I mean, they've both.
I would say Reiner's worse, but
Yes.
only because while Stephen King talks a lot of crap, he hasn't made books and movies full of the garbage yet. So I'm like.
Well, Reiner really hasn't either.
Well, he is now, so I'm like, that's why, So I'm just like,
So yeah, I just think it's funny that his next movie is literally about the fear of Christian
I
nationalism.
know. And I'm like, this is the
come
guy that
on,
made
man.
Stand By Me. That movie's
Yes.
amazing. I was like, how do you go from Stand By Me to whatever the hell you're doing now?
Dude, I don't know.
He's lost. He's lost it.
He didn't do Spinal Tap. He's in Spinal Tap.
He is in Spinal Tap.
Yeah, and he's that one. I'm sorry, that one line. He's like, yeah, they had a 1-word review for your shark sandwich. He said they called it shit sandwich. Spinal Tap is such a good movie. And then of course, he appears in all sorts of stuff like Sleepless in Seattle, and he played a good role in that. He was a good character actor, and he still is. But man, he's just a nutso. But no, our big talk is, of course, is the end. I put on the lower third here. Is this the end of woke capitalism? But more in a much more minute sense, is this the end of woke cinema that we are facing now that we?
This is the one I shared.
Yes,
It's a
Fox,
nice. I think it's a nice.
I think it's a great opinion article.
Yeah.
Yes, it
good.
is. It is. I think it's a decent step forward. I guess. I don't think they've learned their lesson because yes, Bob Iger can keep saying, "Oh, we've gone too political and we've done this and we need to rein back on that." And I think in some ways they have. I think the Marvels showed that by the fact that it looks like it was gutted of anything that was too overtly woke. So I'm like, but again, I think it's still going back to a more subtle approach. I don't think they've and I could be wrong. Maybe I'm hoping I'm wrong. But I really think it's just them saying, okay, we can't be that blatantly preachy because then we lose money. But we have to still
catch on.
Yeah, but we have to keep, all the ideas, these people happy. And I don't trust them. I do think it's I hope maybe, but and again, they didn't have a lot to do with the production of Doctor Who. It mainly was just the deal to stream it, but their money still went towards the production. And I'm like, when I see Doctor Who, which just came out these past 3 Sundays, that's not just went as far as it could. I'm just like, yeah.
And this was billed as a return to bring in the fans of old.
Yeah, and like I said, yes, this is more Disney's deal with them is more to stream the shows. They're not really the ones with the say so, but they still have some input with them funding it. So I'm just like, I feel like if they had really learned their lesson, they would have been at a few points been like, guys, we've been having a lot of trouble with this. Maybe y'all should reconsider how badly you're doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know anything about that show, but I have watched a little bit of what Nerdrotic has said about it, and it seems to me like it's basically over the different eras that this show has had. It had you had old fans, then they made some changes trying to bring in new fans, and yes, like Brandon said, this new iteration is supposed to not only bring in new fans but unite them with the old fans, bring back the people who loved the show when it was first created and everything. And all I've heard about the show is that it's just lost more than it's gained.
It has. This would be because this is now like their third basically era.
Yeah.
They're starting like the new season. They're calling like season 1. Like it's a new reboot basically of the whole series. You had the classic era, then it was dormant like during the 90s, early 2000s before Russell T Davies, who's now the showrunner again, he brought it back, and that was a great like. Old fans came back from the classic era. New fans came in. That was the era that became popular in America and brought Doctor Who really around the world. And now it's entering like this third reboot with Russell T Davies, who returned and brought it back to life the first time. And he's just gone completely.
He's kind of like retconned almost everything that he created.
He's
in the first
ruined.
place.
He's literally like retreaded. Like all 3 episodes are like almost beat for beat matching episodes he wrote in the past, but butchering them. And I'm just like, well, I don't know. It's awful. It's awful.
I mean, is it kind of a I wrote the kind of like a George Lucas edit? I mean, I'm not saying George Lucas was that bad. He didn't destroy his legacy, but when he went back and added like special effects to the old films that were not needed, and it's like, is it him saying, well, these are my properties and I get to do what I want with them?
It's the same, I think, mindset that the video, I don't remember, was it Sean that shared it, of the comic book shop owner?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Who was like,
Brandon shared that.
Writing comic books. It's when he first brought Doctor Who back in the early 2000s with Christopher Eccleston, it very much felt like this is a continuation of the original series. This is the Doctor. Now it feels like, well, because I didn't even know this until now, because again, it didn't play a part in his first era of running the show. Russell T Davies is gay. I never knew that. I know it now from interviews now, him running the show now. So it's like, you didn't have an agenda before. You being gay had nothing to do with running Doctor Who. And that's fine. That's how it should be. Like, whatever. But now it's almost like, because of the era we live in, he has to go even one step further. Because this isn't... when he first brought the show back, there was a character called Captain Jack Harkness, who was, I guess you would call him pansexual now. Basically, he was a sexual deviant. He would sleep with any alien, man, woman thing. But it wasn't like the highlight of who he was, and it was also kind of a character flaw of his. Like, he had a heart of gold, like he's a scoundrel with a good heart, but he's also like this playboy who sleeps around and who has like a bad side to him, because he is kind of a lost character. And because Nerdrotic talked about this, how like what defined him wasn't his sexual orientation, that was like, yeah, kind of a character flaw. Now it's like there is nothing about the character Rose in the new episode, the trans character, other than the fact that she's trans, and that makes her somehow... He's trans, yes.
Sorry.
And that somehow makes this character somehow more capable of dealing with a problem than the Doctor, who's a billion-year-old Time Lord that deals with like time and space. It's like, oh, well, you can't understand or fix this problem, even though you've been alive for billions of years and have solved every problem in the past. He can because he's trans. Like, okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, 'cause he's been through stuff.
Well,
Right.
they made a point
Like I saw
of
as part of
Donna
this.
being a woman and him because he's a woman. They're both women, and because they're women, because that's the joke they made about
Right.
him. It's like, well, you're now a male-presenting Time Lord, and like Donna even tells him, maybe if you were still a woman, you would understand, but because you're not, it's like you just gotta let it go.
Garbage.
Yeah.
It's so lazy.
Like, they literally-
it is
this
so
plot
infuriatingly
Point
lazy.
of this thing that was killing Donna is no longer killing her because they're women. They learned they could just let it go. I was like, oh, if it was always that easy, why didn't she do that 10 years ago when he had to wipe her memory because it was killing her?
But I think
So-
like to kind of bring it back to the
Yes.
article.
I didn't mean to make it a Doctor Who
it's funny.
discussion.
It's like Doctor Who kind of fits in because Nerdrotic
Oh, yeah.
showed
Yeah.
they showed the streaming numbers,
Yep.
the views.
Yeah.
And every episode of
they're
this
bad.
new series has gone down millions of views every week.
and none of them
So
compare to the original, like
right,
his first
right.
run.
So it shows that people are starting to rebel against this woke agenda, and I think that's kind of what this article is talking about, is the backlash that these companies are facing is starting to really show. And I think the fact that there is a backlash proves that the majority of Americans, and not just Americans but people around the world, they're not on board with this.
Well, I mean,
So-
and it's like, it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to deny. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Is at least when you not only factor in, I mean, they mention, I forget who wrote this article, but they specifically talk about the work of institutions that are bringing forth the awareness of, the woke ideology and the fact that they are making people more aware of what it means and why it's even being brought up in the first place and what they're trying to, and it's the whole DEI initiative. It's the diversity, equity, inclusion crap that's going on.
Yeah.
The SG social governance score, is it, or is it, I forget,
The ESG.
ESG, environmental social governance score, and it's like even that stuff is now being they're no longer including that in terms of these major corporations. BlackRock, one of the wokest companies
Yeah.
out there,
Yeah.
and it's the largest portfolio of any private business out there.
Yeah.
It's trillions of dollars in assets, and yet they are backing off of this because they're realizing how much it is hurting their bottom line. So it's getting harder and harder to divorce themselves from instituting these practices that have been forced on virtue signaling on behalf of these major corporations who said, oh yeah, this is what they're preaching at the universities and this is what they're browbeating us. Okay, yeah, we'll give in, we'll do it. And now they can't hide behind their failure. And when you have, I mean, Disney even releasing something around this Christmas called the
Yeah.
Naughty Nine,
Yeah.
and it's sexualizing kids.
I didn't even know anything about this.
No. I haven't
I
either,
looked up
yeah.
the trailer and I'm just like, ugh.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, you want to act like that you can just peacefully or quietly kind of in a boardroom meeting or on a conference call with your shareholders where you're talking about we think there may be a misalignment of values or something. No. You're basically in a very sanguine way admitting you screwed the pooch.
They don't want to have to openly admit it. So
And they're trying to lightheartedly tiptoe around it. And it's like, no, Disney, you screwed up. You've gone full bore into this. You've paved the way that now you can't just quietly turn over, because here's the problem. They've stepped in it to the point where now if you revolt, you're going to create a revolt that if you fire or get rid of all these people that are already, you got rid of the sane ones. Actually, that was something that Nerdrotic brought up in his recent Doctor
All
Who video.
their best people
He said,
are gone.
the people that you've pissed off who are not returning, you're realizing now, oh crap, these were the ones that had common sense. These were the ones who were letting us bend a little and maybe go a little out there on the messages we wanted to share every once in a while so they could roll their eyes and still return next week when everything was back to normal.
Yeah.
But because we put it in everything and we saturate all of it with this crap, now you're getting to the point where you've pissed them off so much, they're done with it, they're turning away from it, they're not coming back, and the only people you have left are the ones who say you do this or you die. And if they're the ones who are the only ones left, you can't kick them out because guess what?
That's all you have left.
Everything.
That's all you got.
That's all you've got left.
Yeah.
You kicked out the ones who were willing to give you a chance, who were willing to give you a second try. But you don't have that anymore.
And once you burn those bridges, it's extremely hard to win people back.
Yep.
I mean, that's something like just business sense in general. And then some of the meetings I went to as a general manager, it's like you try to make things right then and there, because once someone has a bad taste in their mouth, winning them back to your service, to your company, for whatever, is extremely hard. And word of mouth spreads, whether it's good or bad, people are going to say, hey, don't go here because this, and this happens. I mean, you see it on freaking Facebook. I am Dixie Highway. I see people bad-mouthing stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes I roll my eyes because I know they're just being Karens. But the amount of people who will read it and be like, that's awful, I'm never going there. It's like, it does. It spreads.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the funny part. You brought up the cultural meme of a Karen, and it's hilarious because it's like I think that's what all of these higher ups, because they're in their own little bubbles, were thinking that a lot of us sane people were just Karens.
They thought the sane people were Karens.
Right, but then it's funny because now you realize, no, you've been invaded by Karens, and now you've given them the height of running all of this stuff, being the writers, being the showrunners, being the directors. You've given them the oversight of these beloved properties that now they're being tarnished and completely ruined. And it's like, you wonder why we're ushering in and seeing the success of someone like a Daily Wire, even when they put out a subpar film like Lady Ballers. People are aching and wanting it.
Yeah.
We want a return to things that we not only grew up on, but things that we know laugh at the absurdity. We don't even have that in a general sense in this culture anymore because we've been overrun by all of the woke Karens who want to come out here and cry foul the moment somebody's feelings are hurt. Heaven forbid we have a punchline that might rub somebody the wrong way.
Yeah.
That used to be called comedy.
Yeah.
And we can't have it anymore because guess what? All of these woke corporations have been pushing this message and been hiring these people to come in and take over. And now they want to throw their hands up and say, we're sorry, we may have a misalignment in values. Whoopsie. No, it's done. It's done.
Yep.
And so it may be the end of woke capitalism or woke cinema in so much as we're not going to get as much as I think we have in the last few years. But I don't think it's going to be a complete end because these companies have committed the greatest form of corporate suicide that I think you could see within a generation. Mm-hmm. The fact that Disney has a 100-year legacy. And it's funny because actually I just watched a recent video on this. I found it pretty interesting and fascinating. The copyright for the old Steamboat Willie,
it's
Mickey Mouse,
public domain.
it is public domain by January 1.
Yeah, I knew that.
And they were fighting before. They fought 2 other times in Congress to actually reserve the copyright.
They extended it like for a long. There's a lot of copyright laws are because of Disney trying to maintain the Mickey Mouse.
And they finally let it lapse. Funny enough and ironically, because their main source of profit no longer has to do with Mickey. I mean, if that isn't just a telltale sign of where their priorities have gotten mixed up, and you might say, well, yeah, because all their bread and butter is in these greater properties like Lucasfilm and like Marvel.
Yeah.
But look at how those are falling flat. People are losing interest in those. And even though there's still billions of dollars of assets there and worth, the fact that you've gone so far of removing yourself from what your core central tenet used to be, what Disney claimed,
The House of Mouse.
the House of Mouse, its claim to fame, it's one place you could guarantee go to as in the cultural phenomenon as a parent and trust that your kid would be safe, is completely ruined. It is gone.
I agree. I think maybe like they are acknowledging they're starting to see the writing on the wall enough because they're you can only blame COVID and streaming and the strikes for so long before you have to admit, and I think they are beginning to that point where they're like, well, there's nothing else it can be. We have to finally acknowledge it's this thing. But they're already so far in the crap that that's what I'm saying. It's like think of like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption. Like once he's halfway through that tunnel, it's like you can't go back. The only thing you could do is keep going forward.
Yep.
So now it's like they have no choice but to keep going through the crap and hope that one day maybe they can get through it enough to
come out clean on the other side.
It's like it's gonna take years of fixing the problem and years of winning people back. And they have to commit to it, and I don't think they're willing to commit yet because they don't want to lose any more money.
Yeah, having one of your actresses from one of your movies kind of backtrack on some of the stuff she said.
That was hilarious.
That's not enough to fix it. Like that's not even a start.
I read what she said and knew it was like Disney told her you got to get out front and you have to talk Snow White up like you love that movie.
Well,
There's
I love
she
that
said that on her own.
Oh, no way. No way. And the fact that Rachel Ziegler did an interview recently, I mean, it's Hollywood Reporter that puts it out.
Halle Berry.
They do these videos every year called Actors on Actors.
Yeah.
And they have 2 that will talk to each other and interview each other. And this was Halle Berry or Halle Berry.
Yeah.
How was it?
Halle Bailey.
Halle Bailey,
I do
who
it too.
played Ariel in the latest Little Mermaid, race swap. And then we had Rachel Ziegler, race swap of Snow White.
The two that were the most controversial.
And Rachel Ziegler's talking up Disney and how they've been around for 100 years and she respects everything about the company. And they've really given her the opportunity to be where she's at because of what she grew up. A complete reversal.
It was a 180.
And it's so hilarious because she not only doesn't sound genuine, but knowing, too, that she has been radio silent for the last 2 months since all of this controversy broke. They shut her up immediately, threw her in a hole and said, don't say a word. And then they bring her out and she's like, I love Disney.
Yeah, she
Disney's
looked
great.
like
Snow White's the best.
She looked like Greta Thunberg when they push her out of the way to let Donald Trump come through, and her face at that G whatever that stupid summit is, and they move her out of the way to let him come through, and she's in the background looking like she's gonna kill him.
Yeah.
That's what Rachel Ziegler looks like doing that interview, because she thought that she was putting on her big girl pants and being this grown woman and gonna say whatever she wants, and everybody's just gonna follow because And then what happened was the men in this company said, no, you need to shut your little girl mouth, quit acting a fool, because you're ruining this movie before it's ever made.
Because dollars
and
matter.
Her pride is hurt.
And the bottom line is that exactly, she is one person. And when you trust these young nitwits to get out there and be the face of whatever property it is you're selling, but at the same time, you've given them the power.
I know.
You've turned to them and said that what you're preaching is what we're trying to become. And pat on the back, we're gonna escalate you up to the highest highs that we can within the cultural value, and we're gonna tell you that your opinion is what matters most. And so I don't blame Rachel Ziegler for getting out there and being the little stupid idiot she is. But the reason is because she doesn't know any better. She's young and dumb, and she doesn't have any sense in her head because she hasn't lived in real life, and yet she's preaching all of these mumbo jumbo freaking themes that she's heard and have been.
She's just following the fad.
Yeah.
Like, that's what
she's
everybody in Hollywood's
right.
spouting
Until it hurts the bottom line, and then it all changes.
Like you said,
they don't really believe it.
The corporate suits have to come in and say, you got to correct this. You don't correct this, you're done with us. And she's thinking, well, I can't do that. That's my career. I'm on the line. Okay. And then, look at that role reversal. The thing is nobody's buying it. Everybody sees the writing on the wall. The truth is out there because it's not just this one property. It's every property. You've been shoehorning this stuff and trying to feed us crap for so long. We're not taking it anymore. We're done.
Well, like, how more blatant can you be when it's Halle Bailey and her, the two most controversial figures?
That's right.
And it's a complete 180 reversal of Snow White's the best movie ever made. It made Disney, and it's like, okay, when it's like that blatant that the two most controversial all of a sudden it's like, this is damage control, clear and simple.
Which is funny because it's like, oh wow, what it all really comes down to is it's business. It's money that talks. So, look, we're not buying it. At the end of the day, it's going to be a slow fade. But like you said, I think they're so far down the freaking crap pipe that really where they're at is they have no way to move but forward, and they're going to have to completely destroy all of the sense. I mean, they already have destroyed their credibility, but they're going to have to go through so much more pain in terms of just bodying. I mean, look, we've seen it with
trucking through the poo, man.
We've seen it with the Bud Light fiasco. And one thing just to compare the two. Look, they just recently there was that viral video that came out with Mulvaney and being at some kind of event. I think it was on Pennsylvania's campus. I can't remember. It was on some campus somewhere, and of course he's giving a talk and he's in his stupid outfits and doing a
girl
TikTok.
Clothes.
Yeah. And then the thing is that they turn the camera around, and this room that has, I would say, hundreds, 300, 400 chairs in it, and there's maybe 20 people there. And it's just like, and I think Tim Pool tweeted out, and I was like, posted on X. But he made a post. It made perfect sense. He's like, because Mulvaney is not someone that people cherish or champion. They're gawking at a circus act. You're seeing this walking circus act, and you're making fun of it on the side, or you're entertained by it in some bizarre fashion. But that's not the same as support. And the thing is heaven forbid that you have this delusional, completely. I mean, look, and I'm not trying to give Mulvaney the benefit of the doubt. He's asked for this. He has championed it. He deserves every bit of the criticism he's going to receive when he tries to revert and tries to find when he's no longer popular. And the fact is that when you see someone like this who's a freak show, who's not only being gawked at and made fun of, and you have these corporations who are glomming onto it saying, well, look at all of the eyeballs and the success. Look at how much we can drive revenue and capitalize off of this, only in so much as to show support. But we know what it is. It's a mockery. It's literally taking somebody and using them for their own benefit of capitalistic gain for the sake of someone's own personal health. And that's ultimately what this is all decrying. if anything, you don't support it because you ultimately realize there are real people in the end of this fad and this terrible pandemic we have going on of mental illness and mental disease. It's sad and it's atrocious that we are even allowing corporations to make money off of this and use it to their own benefit. So it's best that we don't turn up and champion it, because why should we champion the complete just destroying of these people's lives who really need help? They absolutely need help. And they're banking off of it and laughing all the way to the bank, or actually the lack thereof. They're not even capitalizing off of it because people aren't turning up. People are realizing, I don't want this shoved down my throat. I'm sick of this. I don't want it in every single facet of, I mean, again, it's like, when can I just go to the movies and enjoy myself? When can I escape?
I mean, I used to love nerd culture, and now everything other than anime, which I still watch.
It's been invaded.
But I mean,
Yeah,
Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Marvel, DC.
Yeah.
I'm like every American. Doctor Who's British, but still, every American staple of nerd culture is now corrupted. Doctor Who's corrupted. I'm just like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not, like I said before, I'm not a fan of Doctor Who, and I don't want to get back on that subject because I know that cuts deep. But but it's like, I feel sorry for all the fans of that.
60 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Down the drain.
I'm seeing it all go to the wayside.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to know, too, that he had to get it in there. But no, and it is. It's to see that even from just the last 10 years, because I heard in Nerdrotic's video about how the 50-year special was beloved.
Oh, yeah.
And it was
yeah.
a great return
2000.
of
He
an
said
old classic.
2017 was the death of Doctor Who, and I agree, because that was Peter Capaldi's last. And like he said, the slow decline was before then, but it wasn't that was some writing issues and stuff. They were slowly adding some woke thing, but it wasn't. It was still Doctor Who right up until about his end, and then it just.
It's gone off the deep end.
Michael West, he's on here again. He said, I can't support the woke companies. Disney has destroyed Lucasfilms.
Yeah.
Oh
They
yeah,
have.
100%.
Completely.
And they've destroyed every property that they've garnered and owned. I mean, again, all the properties they bought to basically, put Mickey Mouse in his own grave and say, oh, he's not even worth preserving anymore. We're going to let the copyright lapse.
Well, the version from Steamboat Willie.
I know,
but still,
But here's the thing: if they don't make more litigation or draw,
Eventually,
if they don't lobby, it's like all of these other versions of Mickey are coming too.
Yeah. Yep.
And who knows? Maybe by then they'll be in the lobbying mood because they'll realize we can't depend on these other properties we just bought.
Is Snow White, is that public too? How is Daily Wire able to make a Snow White film legally?
That was based on a fairy tale.
Well, that's
though.
anybody can make a Snow White movie because that's a
that's not a Disney owned property.
It's a Grimm. I think was it Brothers Grimm or was that Anderson? I don't. I think it's a Germanic fairy tale. But yeah, that was something that they adapted. So
I think as long as they don't have the same likeness as
if they
the
don't
animated version,
yeah, you can make a Snow White. It just they can't look like those dwarves and they can't have the same names because the names for those dwarves in Disney's movie are specifically Disney's dwarves.
Okay.
So
all right.
Until it becomes public domain, which who knows? They probably won't care to.
That wouldn't be much longer either. I don't think 1930, 32.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, they've tarnished their reputation. I agree with Matthew. It's like, look, you've got to hit them where it hurts the most, and for us consumers,
Michael,
it is.
sorry, not
I'm sorry, Michael, not Matthew. My bad. But that my bad. I called Stacy a dude.
Yeah. 37.
Or a girl.
I was wrong. 37 was
37.
the end of the 30s. Yeah.
I just called Stacy Spikes. Had a movie pass. I'll never live that one down.
That was good though.
I called him a
You got
woman.
ripped on.
you
You got ripped up on
You don't
YouTube.
even know what you're talking about. Yeah. Call him a woman.
We got to do this.
But
gotta make this happen.
I do ultimately agree. It's like you got to hit them where it hurts. You got to hit them in the pocketbooks, and that's what the people. And I think this has been the biggest lie sold to conservatives for the longest time, which is funny because I like the way Dennis Prager puts it. I'm a fan and I'm pro business. I'm not pro big business. And I do think that once you get to the level of Google, Apple, Walmart, all of these huge institutions, they're just as bad as the Ivy Leagues, where they can shovel and shoehorn in ideological crap that they don't have to live with the repercussions for, but they're going to completely erode away an entire generation for the sake of saying, well, we tried. It's an experiment.
Yeah.
And the best way we can vote is with our dollar by saying, all right, we won't shop there. It's hard when it gets to bigger companies because I think the video I watched on Steamboat Willie's copyright lapsing, they only briefly touched on it. I didn't get a look, but they were showing how these huge corporations are diversified in so many different facets that oftentimes, and we've seen this with other places like Pepsi or Frito-Lay or Yum Brands, all these different brands that have tons of different satellite brands that don't necessarily aren't tied to the main brand, but obviously they have control over it. And so it's hard. You have to be strategic, but I think that's why in the best way possible you can move going forward. Support local mom and pop shops. It's harder to do so, but do it when you can and try to find the best way possible to make your voices heard. And when you can boycott things like Disney, especially when it comes to entertainment, that's the easiest way to boycott because you don't have to. There's tons of crap out there. Tons of crap. Whether it be from woke corporations or not, there's tons of stuff for you to enjoy that doesn't have to be woke. And trust me, they're reading the metrics on this stuff. That's where Disney's falling short. It's not just that people aren't showing up to the theater to see this crap. It's also that they're not tuning into it on Disney+.
Yeah, they're not watching
They're wasting
streaming.
money on this crap that nobody is watching.
That's why everything keeps getting canceled because it's like, oh, we'll give this a season or two. Up, cancel. Well, it's canceled because nobody watched it.
Surprise, surprise. Watchmen just got canceled from HBO, and they're now talking about it being pulled.
I didn't
from
even realize that was still
HBO
going.
Max.
Like I thought.
I'm sorry. I think it was already canceled. Their big news that came out was that they're pulling it from Max.
Yeah, which is still stupid. Like if you own
The show or the movie?
the show. Yeah.
Okay.
They had a Watchmen show, but yeah. Nobody watched it, but
Yeah,
still,
no.
I think it's dumb if you own something. Why are you removing from your service? But that's a different
But
conversation.
I think we're done talking about woke capitalism and its slow demise. But I think we're seeing a turning of the tide, which is good. But let's move on to our multimedia segment.
Yes.
Multimedia.
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 All righty, let's talk about. I think this kind of we sort of hinted at it a couple weeks ago and talked about it with the release of GTA 6.
We've kind of talked about it
trailer.
with Neil before, but not to I think like the extent it was a whole segment.
Good. Okay.
yeah.
So I wanted to touch on it again, and that is: do leaks ruin excitement? And the reason this came about was because of the most recent leak of GTA 6, the trailer.
Yeah.
That came out, and Rockstar just said it's already leaked, so we're going to go ahead and release it a day early. They had a big reveal plan. In terms of that, I don't think anything was ruined.
No.
Simply because they were able to get out ahead of time, but also because we're still like a year removed from the actual release of the product.
And it was-
Everything we saw could change.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Plus,
really.
plus it was the trailer stuff. It's not like they leaked like important plot points or the trailer's meant to be a tease of what's coming anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think like when we had just talked about it with Neil in the past, it was specifically like do spoilers kind of like because it was a couple years ago. I think it was around the time Spider-Man released actually, so maybe not that long, where they talked about there was a study that spoilers don't actually ruin people's entertainment of something. And I agree and disagree to a certain extent. Like in the terms of like Spider-Man, like I'm glad that we never
Talking
got
about No Way Home?
Yeah, No Way Home.
Okay.
Like I'm glad we never got confirmation. Like that made it so much more satisfying. Like
Yes.
pretty much you already knew because of leaks, but
Yeah.
there was never confirmation. But in the terms of like things leaked from like Doctor Who recently, now I want to know. Like I'll read stuff about Star Wars, Marvel, Doctor Who now before I ever watch it because I don't want to watch it and get into all the garbage and be like, well, I wasted my time. Now it's like I'd rather just go ahead and spoil it, see what's in it, so I know it's like okay, I'm not going there.
Yeah. That's what I did with The Last of Us.
Yeah,
Like I didn't watch the episode. I would see what
just-
people said about it on Twitter
read it
when it
and
was
see.
still Twitter, and then I would. Nah, I'm not
and I
gonna
know
watch
there's
that.
always that people are always like, well, how do you know if it's any good or not if you didn't watch it? It's like, okay, well, and I know that it's like this forced message that I
Right.
don't give a crap
Yep.
about. I'm not interested.
Well, and I hate that too because if there was one headline we didn't get into, and part of it kind of plays into this, it's that A24 is bringing its library to HBO Max. And one thing they said in there that they were happy about was because they've done this, the A24 has done this partnership with Peacock, but Max even said, or HBO said, that they're not looking to produce more original content. They're actually looking to just increase the content that people are already aware of and putting more on there. But I think that's smart simply because in the streaming wars we have today, and with the varying demands we've seen put on not only production companies, but with the amount that they've put on these streaming platforms only to show up and have people either one, not watch them, or that they have been bad and lukewarm reception.
Yeah.
That's my issue of like, yeah, if you already know there's enough content out there, why do you need to create more?
Yeah. That's what Netflix used to do.
Yeah.
Netflix used to just have shows that everybody else, AMC,
Yeah.
Breaking Bad got on there, Walking Dead got on there. So it used to be like that was before they were
Everybody had
heavy into their own content.
Well, that's before
Yeah.
everybody had their own streaming service.
Right,
So yeah,
yeah.
Netflix.
And that was and there's still, I think, room for that. But I think because now we have such a bloated, ecosphere of like all of these streaming platforms with all of this content that is impossible to consume in a human lifetime, you have to be subjective and you have to say, I'm gonna trust a review. I'm gonna trust because I'm not gonna waste hours of my life to engage in something that I may or may not like.
Yeah.
I know my taste at a certain point, and I know if I'm gonna like something. And there's times where I'll go outside the box and say I'll give that a try, and I'll either come away liking it or not, or be thankful that I gave it a try.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like my time as I get older is more and more valuable, and I'm not gonna waste it just consuming crap because it's there. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'd rather have that time be spent doing other more meaningful things in my life. And so for me, leaks kind of, they bolster that, I think, excitement to some degree because it can get me more anticipated. Like, I can become more anticipated. Like, one thing I thought about are all of these times where, and sometimes I think it's kind of, it's pushed on the sense of production companies when they say, it's a highly secretive set and we don't want anybody here taking pictures and all cameras are off limits.
Yeah.
And then yet next thing you know, you're seeing a picture of, it's Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman walking together in their outfits from Deadpool 3.
Excuse me.
And I think that's kind of interesting because I'm like, that's not spoiling nothing.
No,
We know who
Yeah.
you're playing. And Ryan Reynolds even came out and he's like, I kind of hate it. It kind of ruins the fun. I'm like, it's getting, that builds anticipation.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That's not the same
Like-
thing as a full scene is leaked that destroys the plot.
Like we already knew, Jackman's playing Wolverine. Yes, it could have been a surprise that he has like the comic accurate suit, but just seeing that makes me that more excited for the movie because it's like finally we get to see him in that suit. So I agree. I think leaks, depending on what it is, can build anticipation. And like if it's really heavy, like spoiler heavy leaks, that might ruin it somewhat. But again, like if it's something I'm really excited about, like that I want to see, it's like, okay, I'll look at that picture and that's cool. But if there's like, here's half the plot of Deadpool 3, I'm just not going to read it because I don't want to spoil it for myself.
Right.
Yeah, that's different than just a set photo or
Yeah.
something like that. I remember even back when that unrememberable Doctor Strange movie. Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
And you hear all this stuff about the Fantastic Four are in there and Professor
the leaks
X
were
is
more
gonna be in
exciting
there.
than the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
And there was rumors that Tom
Cruise,
Cruise was going to be Iron Man and all this stuff. And
Same
I'm just
wavelength,
like,
yep.
that's so awesome. That made me want to go see the movie. And then of course when that scene, pops up and none
was
of that stuff
disappointment.
happens, I was like, damn these leaks. I don't like that.
If anything, I see that's where more of the frustration comes from.
Yeah.
Is
That fans have better ideas than the people making the
yes,
movies.
right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When fans, especially, I mean, this has been going on for at least the last 2 decades. When you've had forums online and they get together and have these fan theories, and sometimes the ideas they come up with are better executed than what is actually written.
Yeah.
And I think it makes the writers and the people, the creators, pissed. It pisses them off.
Well, it's an argument for another time, and I know we've mentioned him probably way more than we should on one podcast, but Nerdrotic also mentions the fact of there's a difference in like fan service and nostalgia bait.
Yep.
And Hollywood acts like fan service is this horrible thing, but it's like, no, fan service in and of itself isn't what ruins the movie. It's this false nostalgia bait that you lure people in with.
Yep.
That's garbage because
Let's Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Bringing back the old guard
Yep.
for Jurassic World Dominion, and then of course
It's just
they're
garbage.
Yeah, the characters are weak. It's like, man, they weren't that weak when
No,
Spielberg
yeah,
did
right.
this.
And then then
Like-
you shit all over it.
Yeah.
It's like now all of a sudden.
Ruin Johnson. We got to subvert expectations.
Right.
That doesn't mean,
Yeah.
doesn't mean you just completely
bring
like
Harrison Ford back and kill him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
twice.
I was gonna say
That
well,
was JJ, but still, yeah.
But well, I think Sean, you shared that article about Adam Driver mentioning he was like, it wasn't me that killed Han Solo, it was wokeness.
Which again isn't something that would be on SNL if they hadn't finally said, well, maybe the woke is causing a problem. It's funny.
Yeah.
You see the slow
Let's
turn.
make fun of it now.
Yeah.
That even they will. I don't even want to talk about the terrible anti-Semitic, skit that they had.
Yeah.
And it getting berated. But anyways, I mean, the fact is that I think we've come a long way in the internet age of there is a proper way to handle this, and I think people understand that there is a certain amount of leaking that it whets the appetites of your fan base. But like you said, then the problem is when you get the fan base in the door and then you only to subvert their expectations and ruin it, and then it's like, oh, these were the pillars we depended on. Well, now you've just shot yourself in the foot because nobody cares, because you just ruined everything that you had built trying to tease them with.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's kind of how I feel. Is like, I mean, if anything with the GTA stuff, it was because I know there was some stuff that leaked about a year ago before the trailer, and everybody was talking about it was trash and it was early builds, and and that's what a lot of the gamer media was coming out and defending. We're like, hey, these are a lot of hardworking people in this. I'm like, okay, yeah, true, and I get from the behind the veil those people being pissed because it's like, hey, this isn't polished. And we're spending a lot of time on this. It's not ready yet. Don't judge us too harshly. Totally understand that. But then when you get to the reveal day, and when I saw the trailer, and my first thought is, this just looks like a fancier GTA 5. Like,
but it's being praised as like this huge leap forward, and I'm just like, I
like,
can see improvement, but it's
right,
not. It's not mind blowing.
But it's nothing like what I thought GTA 5 was back 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, but it's like what I saw, I would hope to have seen after 10 years.
Yeah.
Whether it was being developed
Yeah.
for 10 years or not. It's like, there's nothing there that just was like, oh, wow, I don't see why it took this long.
I don't think it looks any better than any other PlayStation 5 game, like current generation game right now. So
Spider-Man 2 looks better than graphically.
Yeah.
It looks way better.
God of War is gorgeous.
Since we're talking about games, and I know I don't want to like extend this out too long. I just this is multimedia. This only happens like once a month.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up because it has to do with a leak. But have you all heard about this the day before game?
I just saw a review from IGN today, and they trashed it.
Yeah. So I've been following this for 4 or 5 years. Like this was announced like back in 2018 or 19.
Oh wow!
This game was coming out, and it was supposedly there was a leaked bit of game footage that in quotations it got leaked online, and people saw this gameplay of this new game. And it was like The Division and DayZ and Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead. Like it's all this kind of all these amazing games wrapped up into one, this like post-apocalyptic game. And people went berserk over the internet. When's this coming out? Where do we? Well, the developer, Fantastic, I think, is the studio that said they were making the game. They were like, oh well, we're shooting for a 2021 release and all this stuff. We're glad you liked it. It accidentally leaked. We weren't hoping anybody to see it yet. Well, they finally released this big long gameplay trailer, and people went just absolutely insane. Like, we want to buy it. When's the pre-alpha? When's the early access come out on Steam and all this stuff? So they made all these promises. They got all kinds of donor money.
Yep.
From different different people. One company is they gave money towards No Man's Sky, millions of dollars towards that game. Of course, that one had a bad rollout, but now it's amazing.
It's flourishing. Yeah, it's huge.
And,
they've actually
that was
announced their next
id
game.
Software or from.
Oh no,
what's the name of that
it's
company?
oh gosh, no.
Who did that?
I'll look it up.
Yeah. So, but
Super Giant Games or something like that, I think is.
But it was a kind of a small company. But anyway,
yes.
This company said, yeah, we got all this money. We're throwing. Well, so finally they came out with a second gameplay trailer, which looked completely different than the first trailer.
Sorry,
Hello Games. And fans were like, no.
This is not what we
This is not what you showed outright first, but it still looks good. lot of things in here. There's driving, there's multiple locations, it's open world, all this stuff. So they finally released the game 4 days ago on Steam in early access, and people bought it like crazy. And then it's the most refunded game on Steam, and the production,
Cyberpunk.
the developing house shut down.
Oh wow.
They announced the other day that 4 days after the game's released, they're shutting down and closing. And they even say like,
How are they?
they're saying that that any of the money that they've made is going to pay off the debts that they owe. Wow. So, what's come down now is they're saying that this was entirely a scam.
Yeah.
That the company the company never had a game. That the gameplay trailer, after they started analyzing it, they found out that the gameplay trailer was actually CG. It was completely a CGI. It was never a real game. It was all just
Fake.
handcrafted video.
It's like a big scheme.
Yeah, so they showed this amazing thing, got all
I was going to
kinds
say,
of money.
I have never seen, especially in the politically correct world we live in, IGN tries to be a little bit like, they try to give scores that it's like, oh, it's bad, but it's somewhat it's a 4. They gave this a 1.
They gave it a 1.
So that was all I saw. When I
Yeah.
saw that it was a 1, I was like,
Yeah.
how this has got to be just completely broken.
Yeah.
So this was worse than Cyberpunk.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So now the company is shut down. It's like they released all this stuff. They grabbed as much money as they could, and now they're out. They don't have to pay anybody back. They've shut their social media down, their websites down.
They'll get
like
sued.
everything. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Lawsuits are coming.
Now they're wondering if it's like is it a Russian scam kind of thing?
Wow.
So if they're in another country, I guess people who
Jurisdiction.
yeah,
it's like
just screwed.
You just
but
get screwed over.
but people are getting their money back. Steam is still refunding people's money because of it. But yeah, it's insane. It all started with just a leak that they purposefully put out, and now it's come down to this.
And you're right.
Big scam.
I mean, that's the other thing is it can backfire in the other way. It could be nefarious from the standpoint of whoever's creating this.
The game itself, and this is where the internet is just amazing. But the people who actually purchased the game, because it was playable. I think even right now it's still playable. The servers are still alive for now, but they're going down when the company is actually completely under. But people got into this game.
I've got to watch gameplay of this.
Encountered a couple of. It looks
too.
just like The Division. So the whole thing was it was going to be an open world MMO thing, and it ended up just being what they call an extraction shooter. You go in, you get loot, you extract out, just like The Division. That's what it ended up being. And people on the internet started looking at all the assets in the game.
I bet it
the
is
boxes,
The Division.
the boxes, the cars, the textures for the road, the textures for the grass. All of it was purchased as packages from the Unreal Engine store.
Oh, sure.
And they said that when you look at the assets that are in this, like one of the entire city that you enter into in the game, the entire city map is an asset purchased from the Unreal store.
Nice.
So they
didn't make anything.
Nothing.
So
they just put it all together in
they
this
Like
claim-
Windows Movie Maker, but if it's a game.
They claimed that they've been working 5 years developing the game, but they said that assets that are in the Unreal store that are in this game have only been available for about a year. Some of them.
They just threw this
so
together.
they threw it together in the last year to release it, steal people's money, and then bounce out. And it's insane.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lawsuits that are coming.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how in the world something like that gets litigated.
Yeah, I know that's kind of off topic, but we don't get on multimedia very often, and I wanted to
That's insane.
talk
I
about
didn't
it.
even
You
know
got
that-
to look at some of the videos and stuff.
I want to
online
see
about it.
how much of a debacle this is because the only things I
crazy.
can think of are Cyberpunk, which I got refunded, but it's had a resurgence.
And No
Cyberpunk's
Man's
great.
And No
yeah.
Man's Sky.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky was another
Well, it's
one.
funny because Cyberpunk actually poked fun of Hello Games. Someone had tweeted about the guy who runs Hello Games. His name's Sean. I actually have to tweet.
Sean, oh gosh, what is it?
I had
Murray,
it.
Sean Murray.
Yes. But Laverian, I don't know. It says, "Okay, Sean, don't overpromise. Just say we've been working on something and show some clips." And then it quotes, "I'm making Earth," because the new fantasy game is an open world the size of a whole planet.
Yeah.
Which I'm intrigued. But then Cyberpunk 2077 retweeted, "You can always fix it later. Congrats on the impressive review." They were making fun of both each other.
Well, they were making light of both situations.
They both fixed it later.
ended.
Yeah.
Well, and because what it really comes down to is, again, this is where the corporate suits get involved, and I think this is where you're seeing. And I don't want to dive into this. We got to wrap it up.
We're going
I'm sorry. I
but-
took it to a different place.
But no. This is the same crap that I think a lot of people are giving crap to Sony and Bungie over. Sony bought out Bungie, and then now you have these corporate suits coming in, and Sony's usually a little hands off when it comes to letting third parties.
They have.
But then Bungie, I think, has been in dire straits for a while.
They're saying they're going to lose their independence because Sony has to step in.
Right. To save face here. And I think it's pretty telling where Bungie was already headed since the not only release of Destiny 2, but just continuing to milk that cow until it was completely gone. And it's like now you're at a point where it's just like it's sad to see these big developers that were once heralded really make these mistakes when it comes to actually not listening to the fan base or not fulfilling the needs of what they were supposed to be doing in the first place.
I'm not going to get into it on the show, but like Bungie has had a very sordid history of every time they've been an independent studio. They've been owned by like Microsoft, Activision, and then Sony, and they've been independent in between all of them. But every time they're independent, they
screwed the pooch.
They have to be bought by somebody to save them.
Wow.
But it's interesting. Look, we saw Cyberpunk has had a resurgence. No Man's Sky. I ended up buying it back, and like now he's moving on to a new game, and I think he's going to be a little bit more strategic about this release.
Yeah.
Making sure
Light No Fire.
Light
That's
No
the
Fire.
new game.
Yeah.
I will probably I didn't want to get back into No Man's Sky because it'd been so long, but I will probably check this one out.
And at least, I mean, I hate it sounds really weird, but even with it being a planet explorable the size of Earth within a video game world, considering that the last game, No Man's Sky, is quintillion Earths or planets that you can explore.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling huge.
But
and
each
ridiculous.
planet isn't quite that big, which is why I get
True,
Yeah.
but just the fact that they're all procedurally generated and there's just no way to explore all of them, I'm like, at least this one seems a little bit more digestible. But we'll see.
Right.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. We went way too long.
Yeah.
However, there's a reason, and that's because we are not here next week. We are going to have reviews for you. We have 2 reviews. We have our next rom-com review, which happens to be While You Were Sleeping. And our movie review, I don't think we've decided on yet which one we're going to do.
There'll be one.
There will be one, but we're only going to have just a short episode of just me introducing the reviews. We're going to have 2 reviews for you next week, and we will be back after next week, the day after Christmas, the 26th. However, it'll just be me and Keith, because Sean, you will be out of town.
No.
You'll be visiting some familia.
I'll be in Alabama.
Greenbow, Alabama. But that's right. So next week, just some reviews, and then the week after that, after Christmas, we'll be celebrating the fact that Klaus has crawled back into her Klaus hole for another year, and we'll be getting ready for the new year. So until next time, guys, yes, email. What is that again, Keith? Go ahead and tell it to us.
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
That's right. And like, share, subscribe on all of our favorite social media websites. Red Moon Book on Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on X, Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and of course search for Red Moon Productions on both YouTube and Rumble. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And that's it. That's it. What was your name?
I was Gunther yelling at Klaus.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.